We're in Pirkei Avot, the second parak, the second Mishnah, and this is our second shir on this Mishnah. So this, just as a quick recap, let's just read the beginning of the Mishnah again. Rabban Gamliel b'no shel Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi Omer, you'd say, Yafe Talmud Torah im Derech Eretz. Right, beautiful is learning with Derech Eretz, with working. Sheyigiach shnehem meshakachet avon, because the toil in both of them causes sin to be forgotten. Now, what's interesting is the Maharal pays attention to the fact that the Mishnah really says sheyigiach shnehem. It's not simply you're learning, you're working, that's good enough, you're fine, now you're protected. No, it's the idea of you're being yogea in it. You're being amel in your learning. You're being amel in your work. Why is that so important? So the Maharal explains, because we see, and he brings actually quite a large number of psukim and different instances in Tanakh, where he says, well, look what happens when the Torah tells us about like Vayashav, right? Vayeshev, something like that. He's really quoting the Gemara in Sanhedrin, right? So Amar B'Yochanan, Kol Makom Shenemar Bo Vayeshev Eno Elo Lashon Tsar, right? Trouble is coming, not good news. And he gives us a pasuk at the end of Balak, Parsha Balak, right, in Bamidbar, and that's after Bilam had failed to curse the Jewish people, thank God, and Bilam gave his advice to Balak, and Balak sent in the Moabite and Midianite women, and says the pasuk, Vayeshev Yisrael L'Shittim, the Jewish people were sitting on the Shittim, Maktiv Batre, what does it say right after? Vayachal ha'am liznot, and the Jewish people began to meet with these Moabite and Midianite women, which was terrible. It literally led to a plague several psukim later. And then Maharal gives another example, Maktiv Vayeshiv Yaakov, right? In next week's parsha, not Vayishlach, but the one after that, Vayeshiv Yaakov. So Ma'ira, what happens? Mecher Yosef gets sold. And then so on and on. He just keeps quoting these psukim, and we see that it leads to disaster. The question is, why? Why is it so bad to relax? I would think that's a good thing. I'm recuperating. And so the idea here is the relaxing, that is resting, that is, the Maharal said in the section we covered in our last session, was that it's true that it's important to be amel, to be yogea, to do that in both different both elements in terms of the Derech Eretz and the Torah. But the idea is, once you're being amel, once you're pursuing completion, hashlama, then you're allowed to rest, right? You're not like at risk of, if I ever stop, I'm in big trouble. No, the idea is you're supposed to go and put out as much effort as you can in the world, and then you're allowed to kind of come back and recuperate, and that's a good thing. That's actually healthy. That's part of your avoda, and you're not at risk if you do that. What we're talking about is just relaxing for the sake of relaxing, right? The idea of like, all good. Now, the reason why that's so bad, this is the Maharal, why that's so negative, why that's so dangerous, is because when a person does that, what they're saying is, I'm good as I am. With me, all good. No problems. And we're not saying in terms of a satisfaction with one's lot. We mean there's no point of striving anymore. Now, what happens is when a person doesn't want to strive anymore, they're effectively saying, I'm good as is. There's nothing more to do here. And when a person does that, then they're in for trouble. That is to say that almost pretty much always leads to a reduction in quality of whatever it is you've achieved, or even a regression. For example, we see this in the natural world all the time, right? If a person is working out, right, they're going to the gym, hitting it up a lot, and they lose the weight they want, and they gain the muscle mass they want, and they gain the cardio goals that they want, they can't just be like, okay, well, all good, that's it, now I'm just going to coast. If you coast, you're going to lose the muscle mass, you're going to lose the muscle definition, you will likely put on weight, or at least not the weight you're looking to put on. Your cardio capabilities are going to shrink. You'll get out of shape. There's no just coasting. If you're saying like all good here, then you've effectively disconnected yourself from any possibility of becoming better, right? Similarly with a garden, right? A person who's gardened before, it takes an enormous amount of work and effort, and then if a person's like, okay, that's it, and I'm just going to mow the lawn, okay, so weeds are going to sprout, right? Things are going to get out of control. There's no way you'll be able to maintain the garden. So what's the key issue here? It's the amount of effort you're putting in. You want to maintain that garden, you need to get on your knees and make sure to pull out the weeds, and to make sure that everything is done. You need to prune your trees and all of your other vegetation. And similar with your body. Again, even if you just want to maintain what you look like, your goals, you still need to put in a lot of effort, a lot of sweat, a lot of sometimes tears and blood, right? That's just what it takes. And similarly with a person's spiritual pursuits. If a person wants to first not only certainly maintain their spiritual level, but continue to grow, right, to connect to Kadosh Baruch Hu, to connect to God in that way, and to strive ever higher, then you can't just be like, okay, that's it, I've plateaued, I'm good. Whatever I am now, that's where I want to be. You've effectively cut yourself off from the source. And we actually have a Mishnah that tells us this. In the previous parak of Pirkei Avot, we have a Mishnah in Mishnah 13 that says, so Huay Omer, that's Hillel, Nikid Shema Avet Shmei, Udalom Mosif, Yosef, and a person who doesn't add on increases Torah, decreases it. Now the Maharal, on the previous Mishnah, actually interestingly, he quotes this and he says, the Pirush Udalom Mosif, what does that mean? What does that mean he doesn't add? He doesn't add his Torah. She'eno Yagea ve'amel b'Torah. He's not toiling in Torah. It's not about the information that you're bringing in, how much you know. It's about the effort required in learning it. And then he goes on to say, Afal Gav Shalamat Torah, even though he's learned, he's just not toiling in it. And he's not exercising his mind, he's straining his mind over the subject matter. This non-existence, this lacking, this emptiness, it clings to him because his knowledge is going to deteriorate by proxy of him not working hard. And that's why it just goes away. And so we see this, there's a deep element of Yekiya. Now our next question is, okay, fine, but why can't we just have Stam Yekiya? Just be Amel, right? Just put in a lot of effort and you're good. You'll be saved from Avon. And so to that the Maharal explains, no, there are two elements that a person needs to counteract. That is to say, that a person is made out of a body and a soul. So we have to counteract the body and we have to counteract the soul, and we need toil and we need Yekiya for both of them. And that's where Derech and Torah come in. And that's Keneged, says the Maharal, if you're not trying to actualize that underlying potential, etc. So we see Derech Eretz is Keneged the Guf, the body, and the Torah is Keneged Seichel, right, in your mind. Right? So then your body is cast away from sin, right? And you've gotten rid of the Yetzer Hara, and you won't come to sin. But if you're not exercising both in toil, then the Yetzer Hara is going to find one of them, and then you can't say you're gone from sin. Now, what are the two? So he says, right? A person's desire for illicit sensuality, and the Yetzer Hara for Avodah Zarah. Now these two elements correspond to the body, and what's amazing, just as an aside, is the Maharal talks about this, or rather Rashi talks about this in Chumash, right? In Parsha Noach, we see the pasuk says, "V'tishachet haaretz lifnei Elokim," right? "V'timaleh haaretz chamas." Right, the V'tishachet haaretz. What does that mean? What's this lashon of ashchata? Says Rashi, lashon erva v'avodat elilim. It means erva, right? Sensual immorality. V'avodat elilim. That's avodah zarah. That's idol worship. Now it's amazing. Those are the same two we saw in our Mishnah in Pirkei Avot. So why those? So the Maharal here in Gur Aryeh explains. He says, "Why these two? Because the Yetzer Hara, which tries to corrupt us into sinning, it's specifically for these. Now think about it. A person's intellect. What's a person's ultimate desire? To do whatever they want. Like, they don't want to have to be bound by other people's thoughts, by other people's feelings, by God's thoughts, by God's feelings, by anyone else's priorities. I want to do my thing. I'm me. I'm a smart guy. I can figure it out. And whatever I don't like, I don't like. Whatever is inconvenient, I also will not like. And I'm just going to keep going the way. That's ultimately Avodah Zarah. You've crowned yourself as a deity, right? And similarly, the most powerful bodily pleasure a person could have is almost certainly in the area of sensuality. It's a very tempting desire. And so we see it's these two specifically. And that's why that's lashon of ashchata, which again reflects what we see in our own Mishnah. And so that's why, ultimately, we need to have both. Both of these things, first, we need to have Derech Eretz, and we need to have Torah. And once we have these two things, it needs to be in the process of Yegia. And in that way, we'll counteract the two negative forces, and we'll, of course, continue to grow, and to continue to strive, and become close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So those are the ideas. Now, as a dessert, right, as a secondary option, I just couldn't help it. I happened to see this Meshech Chochmah this past year, and or just a couple days ago, and I loved it. And I was like, I've got to share this. So here's what it goes. So in last week's parsha, we see it's literally in Maftir. So if you want to take a look, it's chapter 32, verse 1 and 2. So it says, "V'yashkem Lavan b'boker," right? Lavan got up in the morning. "V'yanashek levanav v'lidrotav," and he kissed his sons and daughters. That's nice. "V'yvarech etem," that's very nice. He blessed them. "V'yelech v'yashav Lavan limkomo," and Lavan went and sat and dwelled in his place. Next pasuk. "V'Yaakov halach ledarko," and Yaakov went on his way. "V'yifkuva malach Elohim," and these malachim of God met him, encountered him. Says Meshech Chochmah, it's an amazing chiddush. He says, look at the difference between Yaakov and Lavan. Lavan lived with Yaakov for 20 years. And what does it say? V'yashav Lavan limakomo. He went back to his makom. He went back to his place. And this idea of yashav, it's true, it also says vayelech, right? Meshech Chochmah does not talk about this, but the idea is the vayelech is qualified by the vayashav, and we'll see another critical element is limakomo. Lavan never moved. He'd been living with Yaakov Avinu, one of the Avos, right? One of the greatest men to have ever lived, for 20 years, and he didn't budge an inch, Lavan. Went back to his place exactly the way he was, zero influence, total disinterest. That is yeshiva. And then we see what is the difference of, not yeshiva as in like the institution, but that is the idea of vayeshev. And then Yaakov halach ledarko, we see a halicha, there's movement, there's progress. And the other critical word is ledarko, on his derech. He was going on a way. He had a way. There was a certain sense of progress. Just to read the Meshech Chochmah's words, it says, "V'Yaakov halach ledarko, shetzadik v'talmid chacham ha'amiti," right? Hu holech l'makom harishon l'malot gadolot, right? He goes from one place to another. There's the destination, and he needs to keep moving. He needs to progress. He needs to grow. He needs to strive. That's the idea here. The difference between Yaakov and Lavan, there are many differences, but one of them perhaps could be summarized by these psukim. It says, "Vayelech vayashav Lavan l'mekomo." Sitting here, I'm not moving, and Yaakov, I'm moving. I'm moving along, and not just along, just stem, turning in circles. There's a derech, there's a way, there's a path, there's a progress that I'm seeing. And what happens in that same pasuk? Vayifkuva malach Elohim. The malachim of God met Yaakov. Through this idea of halicha, that's what the Meshech Chochmah says. I thought that was just too geschmack to leave out. It was so relevant. And we'll see you next time on Hanukkah.